The ancient law said, "Whoever appears in your dreams belongs to you when you wake up." Tales of old magic, strange legends, and mysterious occurrences that seemed impossible yet felt strangely real. Even though she had grown up and moved to a small town far away from her grandmother's village, those stories remained with her like shadows that refused to fade. They were part of her childhood, whispered into her ears under the warm glow of a kerosene lamp, accompanied by the faint smell of old paper and wood smoke. Her grandmother would speak in a voice that was both gentle and firm, telling Sarah that the world was full of mysteries, and some things were far older than anyone could imagine. But there was one story that had always captured Sarah's imagination more than any other. It was about an ancient law that said, "Whoever appears in your dreams belongs to you when you wake up." At first, Sarah had laughed it off as a child, imagining it was just a bedtime tale meant to scare children into being obedient. But over the years, the words had lingered in her mind, haunting her in quiet moments. She often wondered if it might hold a deeper meaning. Could dreams be more than random thoughts? Could they really connect people across time and space in ways that the mind could barely comprehend? It was a rainy afternoon when Sarah decided to visit her grandmother's old house again. The house had been empty for years, left to gather dust and memories. Her grandmother had passed away recently, leaving behind a quiet emptiness that Sarah felt in every corner of the house. There was something comforting about returning to a place filled with memories, even if the memories carried a bittersweet ache. She opened the creaky wooden door, and a wave of nostalgia hit her. The smell of old wood, faded flowers, and the faint scent of her grandmother's perfume filled her senses. Everything was as it had always been, frozen in time. Curious and somewhat restless, Sarah began exploring the house, moving from room to room. In the attic, she discovered a dusty trunk tucked into a shadowy corner. She carefully opened it, her fingers brushing against the rough fabric that covered its contents. Inside, she found old letters, photographs, and stacks of books that seemed to have been untouched for decades. Her eyes fell upon a particularly old book with a leather cover, worn and cracked with age. The title was barely visible, but it seemed to call out to her, almost as if it had been waiting for her all these years. As she opened the book, she realized it was not an ordinary book. The pages were filled with strange symbols, sketches of people, and stories that seemed to be both magical and real. One story caught her eye immediately. It was the tale of the ancient law her grandmother had mentioned so many times. The words were simple but carried a weight that made her heart skip a beat. "Whoever appears in your dreams belongs to you when you wake up." She read the sentence again and again, feeling an inexplicable shiver run down her spine. The book described accounts of people who had dreamed of strangers, only to find that those strangers had an undeniable presence in their lives afterward. It told of connections that transcended logic, events that could not be explained by science, and moments where dreams seemed to cross into reality. Sarah sat on the dusty floor, completely absorbed. She could not explain why she felt so drawn to this story. Perhaps it was the loneliness she had been feeling since her grandmother passed, or perhaps it was a deeper part of her that had always believed in the strange and unexplainable. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes as she read story after story, each one more mysterious than the last. She learned about dreamers who had found lost loved ones, strangers who had become lifelong friends, and even cases where dreams had warned people of events before they happened. The book was filled with wonders and warnings alike. That night, Sarah could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the ancient law. The rain tapped softly against the window, and the house was quiet, except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floor. As her eyelids grew heavy, she felt herself slipping into a dream. At first, it was ordinary. She was walking through a forest she had never seen before, the air crisp and filled with the scent of pine. But then she saw him. He was standing on a small hill, looking at her with eyes that seemed to know her very soul. His presence was calm but powerful, and for reasons she could not understand, Sarah felt an instant connection. She tried to speak, but her voice seemed to vanish. Instead, he smiled gently, as if understanding her unspoken thoughts. Sarah could not move closer, yet she felt no fear. It was as if she had known him all her life, though she could not recall ever seeing him before. When she awoke the next morning, the image of the man lingered in her mind like smoke in the air. She tried to dismiss it as a dream, a trick of her imagination, but something about it felt different, real, almost tangible. She found herself thinking about him throughout the day, wondering who he was and why she felt such a strange attachment. Sarah returned to the attic, opening the book again, hoping for answers. She read the pages about dreamers and connections once more, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. Could the ancient law really be true? Could a person from her dreams somehow belong to her in reality? Days passed and the dreams continued. Each night the man appeared, sometimes speaking, sometimes silently watching, always with the same calm, knowing eyes. Sarah began keeping a journal, writing down every detail she could remember: the way he laughed, the way the sunlight fell on his face, the forest paths they walked together. The dreams felt increasingly real, vivid, beyond anything she had ever experienced. And though she had never met him in the waking world, a strange certainty grew within her that the ancient law might indeed hold a truth beyond imagination. Sarah's friends noticed a change in her. She seemed distant, lost in thoughts she could not explain. She smiled less often, yet her eyes held a secret brightness, as if she were carrying a world of mysteries inside her. She did not share the dreams with anyone, fearing that they would think her foolish. Instead, she immersed herself in the old book, trying to understand the law, hoping to find guidance. The stories in the book hinted that the connection between dreamer and dreamt was rare but powerful. Those who experienced it often found that their lives were forever altered, sometimes in joyful ways, sometimes in ways that challenged their very understanding of reality. And so, Sarah's life entered a quiet, strange rhythm. Days were spent among memories of the past and pages of the old book, while nights brought vivid encounters with the mysterious man. She began noticing small coincidences during the day, glimpses of familiar paths from her dreams, objects she had never owned appearing in the corners of her mind, and moments where reality seemed to echo the dream world. With each passing night, her curiosity grew, mingled with a deepening sense of wonder and trepidation. She realized that the ancient law was no longer a story. It was becoming her reality, slowly and unmistakably. By the end of the first week, Sarah could no longer ignore it. The dreams had changed her. They had awakened something she had never known existed within her, a longing to understand the unseen, to reach out to a world that lay just beyond the waking realm. She was determined to uncover the truth, to see if the law her grandmother had whispered about was real. And deep in her heart, she felt that the man in her dreams was waiting for her, that their connection was not an illusion but something far greater and more enduring than anything she had ever experienced. The attic, the old book, and the rainy afternoons became her sanctuary, her bridge to a world where dreams and reality began to intertwine. Sarah was no longer just a curious girl reading stories. She had become a seeker of something ancient, something powerful, and something that might change her life forever. The journey had begun, and there was no turning back. Every night, as darkness fell and the quiet of the small town wrapped around her, Sarah found herself returning to the dream world. The mysterious man, whose name she only learned in fleeting whispers of her dreams, Elias, was there, waiting. Unlike the first night when he had only stood silently on a hill, now he spoke. His voice was calm, yet carried a strange depth, like he had lived lifetimes before meeting her. Each word felt deliberate, meaningful, and it unsettled Sarah in a way that made her heart race. She would wake in the morning feeling both exhilarated and exhausted, unable to shake the vividness of the dreams. They were no longer fleeting images but full experiences that lingered long after she opened her eyes. In her waking life, Sarah found herself noticing details that reminded her of the dream world, the pattern of the clouds in the sky, the way the sunlight filtered through the trees, even the smell of the rain-dampened earth. Everything seemed connected, and it frightened her how real it all felt. During the day, she continued her routine as if nothing had changed. She visited the small town library, worked on her articles, and met with friends. Yet, her mind was never fully in the present. Thoughts of Elias lingered, appearing in the corners of her mind when she least expected them. She began sketching him in a notebook, trying to capture his face from memory. His eyes, she noted, were the most striking, deep, calm, and full of unspoken stories. Her sketches became a ritual, each one more detailed than the last, as if she were trying to pull him into reality with her own hands. One afternoon, Sarah visited a local antique shop, hoping to distract herself from the dreams. The shop was filled with old furniture, books, and trinkets from decades past. As she wandered through the aisles, her eyes were drawn to a small, weathered mirror leaning against the wall. She hesitated before picking it up, noticing the fine carvings along its edges. When she held it, she caught a fleeting reflection that was not entirely her own. For a brief second, it was as if Elias was standing behind her, his eyes searching for her. She blinked, and the vision was gone, leaving only her startled expression and a pounding heart. Shaken, she placed the mirror back carefully and left the shop, walking slowly through the empty streets. The town seemed unusually quiet, as if it too were holding its breath. Sarah could not explain what she had just seen, but she knew it was connected to the dreams. The line between reality and dream had begun to blur, and she felt both fear and a strange exhilaration. That night, she did not need to fall asleep to see Elias. He appeared as she closed her eyes, as if he were waiting for her, knowing she would arrive. Their conversations grew longer. Elias spoke of distant lands, of times she could not place, and of emotions that felt both ancient and familiar. He laughed at small things, smiled at moments she could not fully understand, and sometimes remained silent, watching her with a calm intensity that left her breathless. She began to notice patterns. He would appear when she was feeling particularly lonely, or when her thoughts wandered to questions she could not answer. It was as if he was attuned to her deepest needs, guiding her through a world that existed only in dreams but felt more real than her daily life. Curiosity consumed her. Who was Elias? Why did he appear in her dreams? Sarah turned to the book she had found in her grandmother's attic for answers. The book described dreamers who connected with souls that had either been lost or forgotten, people who had unfinished stories and could only reach the living through dreams. The idea fascinated her. Perhaps Elias was one of them, a soul waiting to be understood, waiting for someone like her to recognize him. Sarah felt a sense of responsibility, a need to understand him and the law that bound them together. One morning, she awoke to a small but startling sign. On her nightstand lay a folded piece of paper she had never seen before. The handwriting was delicate, unfamiliar, yet strangely familiar, almost like it carried a memory she could not place. Carefully, she unfolded it and read the words, "I am here." "Find me." Her pulse quickened. Could it be him? Was this a message from Elias crossing the threshold from dream to reality? She felt a mixture of fear and wonder. It was impossible, yet undeniable. Over the next several days, Sarah noticed more signs. A key she had never owned appeared on her desk. A small book she did not remember buying sat open in the living room. Even the air in certain rooms seemed different, carrying a faint scent of pine, reminiscent of the forest from her dreams. Each discovery strengthened her conviction that Elias was real, that the ancient law was more than folklore. It was as if reality itself was bending to accommodate the connection between her and the man who existed beyond time. Sarah confided in no one, afraid that anyone would dismiss her experiences as imagination or stress. Instead, she immersed herself in research, visiting local libraries, old archives, and historical records. She learned that in folklore, dreams were often considered a bridge between worlds, a place where the living and the lost could meet under certain conditions. The ancient law, she realized, was a rare phenomenon, one that most people would never experience. But Sarah felt a thrill at being part of something extraordinary, even if it came with uncertainty and danger. As the nights continued, Sarah's dreams grew increasingly vivid. She and Elias explored the forest together, walked along rivers that glimmered with moonlight, and sat in quiet meadows where time seemed suspended. He spoke of things she could not understand fully, memories of places she had never visited, events that had happened long before her time, but she listened, absorbing every word. Each interaction left her with a strange warmth, as if the connection itself was a living presence within her. She began to feel that she was not merely dreaming but participating in a shared reality, one that existed alongside her waking life. With this growing connection came an unexpected challenge. Sarah struggled to maintain focus during the day. Work became difficult, and she sometimes found herself staring blankly into space, lost in thoughts of the dream world. Her friends grew concerned, noticing her distraction and her increasingly quiet demeanor. Yet she could not bring herself to explain what was happening. How could she describe a man who existed only in dreams, yet left traces in reality? How could she explain the feeling of being known completely by someone she had never met in the waking world? The questions left her both anxious and determined. One evening, while sitting in the attic with the old book open before her, Sarah realized something remarkable. The more she focused on Elias in her dreams, the more detailed and tangible he became. It was as if her belief, her attention, and her longing were drawing him closer, not just in the dream but into the waking world as well. A sense of awe filled her. She was participating in something beyond ordinary life, something that challenged everything she had known about existence. She understood now that the ancient law was not just a legend. It was a force that connected souls, a bridge between reality and the mysteries of the mind. That night the dream began differently. Elias appeared before her, not in the forest, but in a place that seemed like a combination of her home and the dreamscape. He reached out, and for the first time she felt the sensation of his hand as if it were truly there, tangible and warm. Sarah gasped, pulling her hand back, unsure if it was real or imagined. But the warmth remained and the sense of connection was undeniable. It was the first moment she truly believed that the ancient law might allow something impossible, a dreamer to touch a soul that had existed beyond the limits of time. By the end of the week, Sarah's life had shifted entirely. Days were filled with anticipation and curiosity, nights with wonder and connection. She knew that something extraordinary was unfolding, something she could neither fully control nor completely understand. Yet she felt compelled to continue, to explore the boundaries between dreams and reality, to see where this mysterious law would lead her. The experience was intoxicating, frightening, and beautiful all at once. Sarah realized that her journey was only beginning. The dreams were no longer mere images. They were a living world in which she and Elias shared a bond that transcended logic. She had entered a realm of mysteries, a place where the past, present, and imagination intertwined. And though she did not yet understand the full power of the ancient law, she knew one thing with certainty. Her life would never be the same again. Sarah's dreams had grown stronger, more vivid, and increasingly difficult to distinguish from reality. Each night, Elias appeared with clarity that left no doubt in her mind that he existed in some form beyond mere imagination. By now, Sarah had accepted that the ancient law might be true. Still, she had no idea what it meant or how far its reach could extend. The line between dreams and the waking world began to blur, leaving her both excited and fearful. It started with small, almost imperceptible signs. She would awaken to find objects in her room slightly out of place. A pen that had been on her desk would appear on the floor. A book she had never seen before lay on the nightstand. At first, she dismissed these as coincidences, but they became too frequent to ignore. One morning, Sarah awoke to find a small, carved figurine sitting neatly on her dresser. She had no memory of placing it there, and yet it felt intimately connected to the dreams she had been having. She picked it up carefully, running her fingers over the smooth edges, feeling an unexplainable warmth. The connection between Elia's and her waking life grew stronger with each passing day. Sarah began noticing familiar sights from her dreams in the real world, shapes of trees, patterns in the clouds. Even the way sunlight fell through her window reminded her of the dream forest where she had first met him. It was as if reality itself was bending to reflect the dream world. The sensation was both thrilling and unsettling. She felt as though she was walking on a thin line between two realities, one where she lived her ordinary life, and another where Elia's existed fully and unmistakably. Sarah's obsession with discovering the truth led her to research more intensely. She visited the town library almost daily, combing through ancient books, folklore, and local legends. She learned that in old cultures, dreams were often considered portals, bridges that connected the living to spirits, to lost souls, or to people separated by time. Some stories described individuals who had met people in their dreams and then found tangible evidence of their existence in the real world. The ancient law, Sarah realized, was not just a story. It might be a fragment of a forgotten truth. One afternoon, she visited an archive in a neighboring town. The building was quiet, filled with the scent of old paper and polished wood. She searched through documents, letters, and records from decades past, hoping to find someone who might connect to the man she saw in her dreams. Hours passed, and her frustration grew. But just as she was about to give up, she discovered a file tucked between old census records. The name on it caught her breath: Elias Whitmore. The birth date was decades earlier, and the records indicated that he had died young, under circumstances that were not fully explained. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the details. Could this be the same man she had been dreaming about? How could someone who had lived and died so long ago appear so vividly in her dreams? That night, she dreamt of him again. Elias seemed different this time, aware that she had discovered his existence in the waking world. He reached out his hand toward her, and she felt a strange warmth in her chest, as if he were truly close. "You found me," he said softly. His voice was steady, yet tinged with something she could not place, relief, perhaps, or gratitude. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, not out of sadness but from the overwhelming intensity of the moment. She wanted to ask him everything, to understand why he appeared to her, but words failed her. In the following days, more signs appeared in her waking life. A letter, written in the same handwriting as before, arrived in her mailbox. It contained a few simple words: "I am near. Trust the law." Sarah did not know whether to fear or embrace it. She felt a mixture of awe and apprehension, understanding that the ancient law was no mere superstition. It was a force that could reach across time and space. Every instinct in her told her to pursue it, to uncover the truth fully, no matter the consequences. The experience began to change her daily life. Sarah felt more attuned to small details, noticing the patterns in nature, the way shadows moved, and even subtle changes in the air around her. Sometimes she felt Elias' presence when she was alone, as if he were watching, guiding her without speaking. Friends noticed her preoccupation and asked if she was all right, but she could not explain what was happening without sounding insane. The secret became hers alone, a mysterious bond that filled her with both wonder and loneliness. One evening, she returned to the attic and opened the old book. It was her guide, her connection to the past, and the source of wisdom that seemed to bridge the waking world and dreams. As she read, she found passages about the rare phenomenon of dream connections. The book suggested that such connections were strongest when the dreamer recognized the existence of the soul in question, when belief and understanding aligned. Sarah realized that her faith in the law, her acceptance of the impossible, had strengthened the connection to Elias. She was no longer a passive participant. She was actively part of a story that spanned life and death, dream and reality. That night, the dream came alive in a way that shocked her. Elias was no longer in the forest, but in a place that resembled her own home, though softened and glowing with a dreamlike quality. The boundaries of the dream and reality had begun to merge. Sarah reached out her hand, and this time she felt the warmth of his touch. It was fleeting like a spark, yet it left her trembling with a mixture of disbelief and wonder. The law, she understood now, was real. Dreams were not just visions, they were meetings, encounters that could influence reality. Over the next few days, Sarah noticed even more tangible signs. Small objects associated with her dreams appeared in her room, leaves from the forest paths, sketches she had not drawn herself, and notes in handwriting she did not recognize. Each discovery reinforced her belief and deepened her curiosity. She began documenting everything meticulously in a journal, noting the date, time, and details of each occurrence. She felt like an explorer mapping uncharted territory, charting the boundaries between her life and a world she barely understood. Sarah also began reflecting on the nature of dreams themselves. She wondered if every dream carried a hidden meaning, if other people had similar experiences they could not explain. She pondered the fragility of reality and how easily the mind could be influenced by belief, memory, and desire. Yet, despite all her logical reasoning, the connection to Elias was undeniable. It transcended explanation. She could feel it in her heart, in the small coincidences of her day, and in the moments when she drifted between waking and sleep. One night she decided to test the boundaries. In her dream, she asked Elias if he could follow her into the waking world, if the law allowed him to appear beyond the dreamscape. He looked at her thoughtfully, his expression serious yet gentle. "The law does not grant me freedom," he said softly. "It allows me to exist where our worlds meet, but only as long as the dream continues. The waking world is yours. I am yours in ways you cannot yet see, but reality has its own rules." Sarah felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. She realized that while the connection was real, it had limits. The ancient law was powerful but delicate, requiring patience, trust, and understanding. As the nights went on, Sarah's resolve strengthened. She became determined to explore every aspect of this connection. She wanted to understand Elias fully, to honor the law, and to respect the mysterious bond they shared. She understood that this was not a story to be rushed. The law worked in its own time, revealing truths gradually. She also began to accept the uncertainty, realizing that part of the magic of this experience was its mystery. She could not control it, only witness it and participate with an open heart. By the end of part 3, Sarah's life had shifted profoundly. Her dreams were no longer separate from her waking existence. They had become intertwined, influencing her emotions, her thoughts, and her sense of self. She knew she was living in a world where ordinary rules did not apply, where connections could transcend time, space, and life itself. The ancient law had chosen her, or perhaps she had chosen to recognize it. Either way, she felt a responsibility to honor it, and an excitement for the journey that lay ahead. Sarah went to bed that night with a mixture of anticipation and calm. She knew that the connection to Elias would continue to deepen, that new signs would appear, and that her understanding of the law would grow. Dreams, she realized, were not merely for sleeping. They were for discovering, for connecting, and for experiencing realities that existed beyond the ordinary. And as she drifted into sleep, she felt Elia's presence, strong and unwavering, as if to remind her that she was not alone, and that their story was only beginning. Sarah had grown more determined than ever. The signs in her waking life, the warmth of Elia's presence in her dreams, and the mysterious messages she continued to receive left her with no doubt. The ancient law was real, and it had chosen her. But the questions remained. Why him? Why now? And what did it mean for her life in the waking world? She needed answers, and she could no longer rely solely on dreams. One bright morning, Sarah set out to explore her grandmother's old town more deeply. She had already visited the library and archives, but she realized there were stories that lived only in the memories of people who had been there when Elias was alive. The town was small, and older residents often remembered events and people from decades ago. Sarah hoped that by speaking with them, she could uncover the truth about Elias Whitmore, the man who haunted her dreams and had begun to touch her reality. She visited the local cafe first, a place that had existed for generations. The wooden tables creaked under her weight as she asked the owner, an elderly woman named Margaret, about Elias Whitmore. Margaret's eyes widened slightly at the mention of the name, and she leaned in closer. "Elias Whitmore," she whispered. "It's been a long time since anyone asked about him." Sarah encouraged her to continue, listening intently as Margaret recounted fragments of memories. Elias had been a quiet boy, kind and gentle, always observing the world with thoughtful eyes. He loved reading, wandering in the nearby forests, and had a fascination with old stories, much like Sarah herself. Margaret hesitated before mentioning the more mysterious aspects. "There were stories even then," she said softly. "People said he had a way of knowing things, of being in the right place at the right time, almost like he could see the future. And, well, some said he appeared in dreams. Strange, isn't it? Nobody could explain it. He was gone too soon, and the town never understood what happened to him." Sarah's heart pounded as she listened. It was more than coincidence. It was as if destiny had been guiding her to uncover these stories. She thanked Margaret and promised to return with more questions. Over the next few days, Sarah visited other elderly residents, piecing together the life of Elias Whitmore. She learned he had lived during a time when the town was smaller and quieter, a world more connected to nature and traditions. He had a family who loved him, though they were unable to protect him from the mysterious circumstances that led to his early death. As Sarah listened to the stories, she began to understand the depth of his life and the lingering energy he might have left behind, the energy that now allowed him to reach her through dreams. Sarah also explored abandoned places connected to Elias' life. She walked through the old forest paths he had loved, imagining him wandering among the trees, feeling the same breeze, smelling the same earth. She visited the house where he had lived, now empty and overgrown, yet somehow familiar. Every step she took felt like a journey closer to understanding him, and with every discovery, her dreams that night became even more vivid. Elias appeared as though aware of her explorations, speaking to her with gratitude and concern. "You're finding the pieces of my life," he said softly. "Each one matters. Each one brings us closer to understanding the law." The connection between dream and reality grew stronger than ever. One night she found a letter tucked under her pillow, written in Elias' familiar handwriting. "The world is full of rules you cannot see. The law is older than time. Follow me in your heart and you will understand." Sarah felt a shiver run through her body. His words were both a comfort and a warning. She realized that this journey was not just about understanding the law, it was about responsibility. The ancient law had given her access to something extraordinary, but it required respect, patience, and courage. Sarah began documenting everything meticulously. She kept a journal of her dreams, the signs she found in reality, the stories she uncovered from the townspeople, and the letters from Elias. Each entry was a small piece of a larger puzzle, a puzzle she was determined to complete. The more she learned about Elias' life, the more she felt the weight of the connection. He had been a real person with hopes, fears, and dreams of his own. The ancient law had allowed him to reach her, but she understood now that it was not merely a magical gift. It was also a bridge between two lives, two worlds, and two timelines. One evening, Sarah dreamt of a hidden room she had never seen before in Elias' home. In her dream, it was filled with books, journals, and personal belongings, all perfectly preserved. Elias led her inside, showing her the artifacts of his life. Each item told a story, a sketch, a diary entry, a photograph, moments frozen in time. Sarah felt a deep sense of reverence, realizing that she was witnessing a life that had been paused, waiting for someone to remember it. "This is my world," Elias said, "and now it is part of yours too." The dreams also revealed pieces of the tragedy surrounding Elias' death. Sarah learned that he had been sickly as a child, often confined to his home. The townspeople had done their best to care for him, but there were mysteries that nobody could explain. Some nights Sarah felt his sorrow, the sadness of a life cut short, and the longing to connect with someone who could understand him. It was a heavy feeling, yet it strengthened her resolve. She wanted to honor his life, to give meaning to the connection the law had created. As Sarah delved deeper, she began to notice that the law seemed to respond to her understanding. The more she learned about Elias' life, the more tangible he became in her dreams, and the more signs appeared in reality. It was as if the ancient law required knowledge, respect, and dedication to function fully. The book from her grandmother's attic hinted at this, describing the law as a force that was both delicate and powerful, bridging the realms of the living and the departed, but only for those who approached it with care. The journey was not without challenges. There were moments when Sarah felt frustrated, unsure if she could ever fully grasp the depth of Elias' existence. Sometimes she awoke to find no signs of him, no letters, no warmth, only silence. Those nights were the hardest, leaving her questioning whether the connection would endure. But each time she persisted, each time she explored more of his past, the connection returned stronger, teaching her patience and resilience. She began to understand that the law was not merely a gift, it was a responsibility, one that required dedication and courage. In one particularly vivid dream, Elias spoke to her about choice. "The law is not a chain, Sarah," he said. "It is a bridge. You may follow, but the path is yours. What you choose will shape both of our worlds." Sarah reflected on his words when she awoke. She realized that the connection was not just about him reaching her. It was about her embracing the law, understanding it, and deciding how to live with it. It was a journey that demanded trust, commitment, and the courage to face the unknown. By the end of this phase of her journey, Sarah had pieced together much of Elias' life. She knew his personality, his habits, his joys, and his sorrows. She understood the mystery of his death, and she had begun to comprehend the delicate mechanics of the ancient law. But she also recognized that there were limits. Elias could exist fully only within the space between dreams and reality. The waking world was still her domain, and the law had chosen to connect them in a way that honored both worlds. Sarah felt a mixture of triumph and humility. She had uncovered truths that most people would dismiss as impossible, and she had experienced a connection beyond anything she had ever imagined. The law had allowed her to reach across time, to touch a life that had ended decades ago, and to understand the soul of a man who had long been forgotten. It was a revelation that changed her perspective on life, death, and the power of belief. As she drifted into sleep that night, Sarah felt Elias' presence stronger than ever. His voice, calm and reassuring, echoed in her mind. "You have done well," he said. "You honor the law." and soon you will understand its deepest truth." Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of peace and anticipation. The path was still uncertain, the journey far from over, but she knew she was ready. She had discovered the story of a life, embraced the mystery of the law, and learned that some connections are meant to transcend the ordinary boundaries of time and space. The nights had grown long and deep, and Sarah had learned to navigate the delicate balance between dreams and reality. The connection with Elias had strengthened in ways she had never imagined. Every dream revealed more of his life, his memories, his hopes, and even the small moments that made him human. Yet with all the understanding she had gained, a question had begun to weigh heavily on her. How far did this connection go? How real could it become? And what was she willing to sacrifice to honor the ancient law? Sarah spent the day wandering through the old town, thinking deeply. She retraced paths she had walked countless times before, letting her mind drift to the forest where she had first met Elias in her dreams. The sunlight fell gently through the trees, creating patterns on the ground that mirrored those she had seen countless times in her sleep. It was in these quiet moments that she felt closest to him. The law had given her glimpses into a world beyond her own, but it had also given her a choice. The choice to step fully into it or to let the connection remain a beautiful, intangible secret. That night, the dream began differently. Elias appeared before her, not in the familiar forest, but in a place that felt like a combination of her attic and the forest, a liminal space between waking and dreaming. The air was calm, almost electric, as if the world itself were holding its breath. "Sarah," he said softly, his eyes filled with emotion she could not name. "The time has come to choose. The law has brought us together, but it cannot sustain itself without your understanding. You must decide how we continue." Sarah felt a shiver run through her. She had anticipated this moment, yet now that it had arrived, the gravity of it pressed upon her. To fully embrace the connection meant stepping into a realm where the boundaries of life and death, reality and dreams, were fragile and mutable. To reject it meant accepting the bond only in her heart, leaving Elias in the dream world. She looked at him, studying every detail, the way his hair caught the moonlight, the depth of his gaze, the quiet strength that radiated from him. She realized that her choice would shape not only her life, but his continued existence in this shared space. "I don't know if I can step fully into your world," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know what will happen if I do." Elias reached out, taking her hand gently, and the warmth of his touch filled her with both reassurance and a strange longing. "The law is a bridge, Sarah," he said. "It is not a chain. It allows you to connect, to experience, to understand, but the choice must come from you. Nothing can be forced. Only trust, courage, and love can guide you." In that moment, Sarah understood that this was more than a dream. It was a test of her heart, her willingness to embrace the extraordinary while remaining tethered to the ordinary. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the discovery of the book, the vivid dreams, the letters, the signs in the waking world, and the uncovering of Elias' life. Each step had been leading to this point, each lesson preparing her for the choice she now faced. She thought of her life before the dreams, the ordinary routine, the simplicity of her days, and the loneliness that had lingered after her grandmother's passing. That life seemed smaller now, insignificant compared to the vast, intricate world the law had revealed. Yet she also knew that stepping fully into this connection carried risk. She might lose her grip on reality, or find herself forever bound to a world where the rules of time and space were uncertain. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Sarah and Elias spoke of everything: memories, fears, hopes, and the mysteries of life. He showed her moments from his past she had never known, experiences that had shaped him, and the sadness of a life cut short. She listened, absorbing every detail, feeling a profound sense of empathy and love. The connection was no longer just about dreams. It had become a meeting of souls, a recognition that transcended the boundaries of ordinary life. Finally, Sarah made her decision. She would honor the law, not blindly, but with full awareness of what it meant. She would embrace the bond, allowing it to exist fully within the limits that the law permitted, trusting that the connection itself would guide her. "I choose to trust it," she said softly, her hand still in his. "I choose you, Elias, in the way the law allows." Elias smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude lighting his face. "Then we continue together," he said, "not bound by fear but guided by understanding. The law has chosen well." In that moment, Sarah felt an overwhelming peace, a sense of completion that filled her being. The dreams no longer felt separate from her reality. They were integrated, part of the same journey, a bridge between worlds that she had learned to walk with courage and awareness. The following nights were unlike any she had experienced before. Elias appeared not as a distant figure in dreams, but as a presence that felt fully realized, vivid, and intimate. They shared conversations, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Sarah felt the warmth of his presence even as she awoke, the signs in the waking world becoming subtler yet more meaningful. A leaf she had never seen before appeared on her desk, a book open to a page she had not read, small reminders that the connection persisted beyond sleep. Sarah also began to see the effect of her choice on herself. She became more attuned to life, noticing the beauty in ordinary moments, understanding the depth of human experience in ways she had never known. The law had not taken her from her world. It had enhanced it, showing her that extraordinary connections could exist alongside the ordinary, and that love, trust, and courage were the keys to bridging any divide. As days turned into weeks, Sarah realized that she had changed profoundly. The connection with Elias had given her clarity, empathy, and a deep appreciation for the fragile nature of life. She knew now that the law was not a tool for possession or control, but a force that connected souls in ways that honored both life and memory. She had been chosen not simply to experience Elias, but to understand the profound meaning of connection, of love that transcends time, space, and even life itself. One night, in a dream that felt more real than waking life, Elias spoke again. "The law has allowed us to meet, to understand, and to share. But remember, Sarah, it is not about holding on. It is about embracing what is given with respect and gratitude." Sarah nodded, understanding fully now. The connection was a gift, a rare and precious one, and it required mindfulness, respect, and the courage to let it exist in its purest form. The final weeks of her journey were filled with quiet joy. Sarah and Elias shared moments that were simple yet profound. The way sunlight fell on a path, the gentle rustle of leaves, the quiet understanding between them that needed no words. The ancient law had fulfilled its purpose, to connect them, to reveal truths about life, death, and the nature of the soul, and to leave Sarah with a sense of wonder and wisdom that would stay with her forever. Sarah awoke one morning, the memory of her dreams lingering like a soft, warm light. She smiled, feeling Elias' presence in a way that was neither intrusive nor frightening, but gentle and reassuring. She understood that their story did not need to be bound by the rules of time or ordinary life. The law had given her the chance to experience something extraordinary, and she would carry it with her, always in her heart, and in the subtle signs of the waking world. In the end, Sarah realized that the ancient law was not about possession. It was about recognition, understanding, and the courage to embrace the extraordinary. Dreams had led her to Elias, and he had led her to herself. Through this journey, she had discovered the power of connection, the beauty of trust, and the depth of love that transcends the limits of life. And though she could not always see him in the waking world, the bond they shared remained unbroken, a testament to the law that had brought them together, a reminder that some truths are understood only between dreams and reality. Sarah's story, like Elias, had become part of the unseen world, a narrative woven between sleep and wakefulness, between life and memory, between what is and what could be. She had learned to cherish the intangible, to honor the law, and to embrace the mystery that connected them. And in the quiet moments when the world seemed still and the stars shone brightly above, she could feel him there, a presence that was real, timeless, and forever a part of her life. The journey was complete, yet it was also just beginning. Sarah had chosen, and through her choice, she had discovered a truth that was as ancient as the law itself. Some connections are meant to transcend the ordinary, to exist beyond explanation, and to remind us that love, understanding, and trust are the bridges that link hearts. Across time and space, she had embraced the gift, and in doing so, she had become a part of a story that would live on, in dreams, in reality, and in the quiet whispers of the world that still holds mysteries waiting to be discovered.